There are countless books and podcasts for new parents to help them figure out what their parenting style will be. Though it's different for each family, the decision on how to raise your children is one that affects the rest of their lives. But what if I told you that how you parent isn't necessarily up to you? Last week, Dalton Conley, author of The Social Genome, explained how our genes can predict life outcomes based on genetic scores called the polygenic index, or PGI. What he realized through his research is that our genes can also influence others, which he had a front row seat to while parenting his 3 children.
Parents like to think that socialization is a one-way street from the parent to the children, but we found that actually what kind of genetic profile your child gets by random chance from the 2 parents really affects how you parent them.
Conley is the Harry Putnam University professor of sociology at Princeton University. He says that kids can condition their parents to cultivate certain needs through how they respond to various situations. Children in the top percentile for educational success may react more positively to mentally stimulating activities, and so to keep them happy, the parents will subconsciously foster that development.
So the kid with the higher polygenic index, we're going to end up reading more to and engaging more in play and like board games and toys with them. They're going to basically extract more nurture from us. So it was really humbling after I have 3 kids to realize that, I think I'm in control about how I'm raising them, but actually they're, to a large extent, their genes are driving how our interactions occur and how I parent.
Interestingly, it is possible for parents to make sure that their kids have a higher PGI for certain outcomes, like education.
So, for example, already there are some fertility clinics that offer parents doing IVF a chance to pick which embryo they want to implant based on the polygenic score. So parents might want to maximize the polygenic score for cognitive ability, or another set of parents might want to minimize the risk for heart disease. And there are going to be trade-offs that each set of parents are going to make. These scores are so noisy right now, and the amount of embryos we generally get from IVF cycles are so limited that I don't know if there's a lot of benefit to doing that from a parent's point of view, but there's definitely kids out there that are being polygenically selected babies, more than there are genetically modified babies.
However, there's a huge caveat to this system. PGIs only work within groups. The same scores for one group won't mean the same if they're applied to a different community.
In fact, currently the scores we have are only valid for people of exclusively European descent, like what we would call white Americans, because we have the biggest samples across the world for European people. And so we have a lot of information for Europeans, and the scores predict well for Europeans. But even if you take something like the height score and try to predict the heights in African populations, for example, based on the scores we have, it just says it predicts that literally almost every person of African descent in the world would be shorter than every person in the world who is of European descent, which we know is just not right. They just don't predict across groups.
To further explain this, there's an idea that Conley calls the chopstick example. Imagine you're running a genetic study on the ability to use chopsticks, and your sample size consisted of people from all over the world. Your research would show that people who are better with chopsticks tend to have more C base pairs in one specific area of the genome, which must mean that chopstick use is determined by this one factor, right?
So it would appear that, oh, wow, we found some gene for like finger dexterity or something like that. But then it turns out that that gene, that location in the genome just happens to have more Cs in Asian populations, in East Asians, Japanese, Koreans, Chinese, for example. And we know that culturally, those societies use chopsticks. They're good at using chopsticks because they have a lot of cultural practice. It's nothing about their fingers or inherent to their bodies, but because they happen to have higher levels of the C at that location as opposed to the A, we would attribute it, we found the gene that involves manual dexterity for chopsticks, when really all we discovered is a location that tags people from East Asia.
Which means that scientists need to be very careful about how they interpret this data. It's a glaring error in the field that's currently trying to be fixed. But despite the ongoing effort to collect more data from different populations, Conley says it'll be a long time before other groups are able to catch up. So as those communities build their own databases, people of European descent have an important question to answer. Do you want to know your genetic fate, or continue to build your life ignorant of your PGI scores? expectations can have a major impact on your personal drive and desires.
You could get a score that suggests that you should be like an awesome athlete. You have 2 copies of the fast twitch muscle gene, the sprinter's gene, and you have great endurance. And, you're a couch potato and you're all of a sudden like, wow, actually, I might have some ability at this. I'm going to get off my butt and start working out.
But this influence works both ways.
You might get a low score for educational attainment or cognitive ability. And even though these are so noisy that you could literally still be a genius with the low score, you take that to heart and you interpret it as like not a death sentence, but a fait accompli, and then you just give up on sort of self-improvement and education. That's the psychology of different people. Like I personally would want to know my score for dementia. My father died of Alzheimer's. I want to know, did I inherit the risk? My sister does not want to know.
But at the end of the day, ignoring your scores doesn't make them disappear. We're still being influenced by our genes every second of the day. And as Conley pointed out, it's how these genes interact with our environment that creates the magic of who we are as individuals, which turns the nature versus nurture debate completely on its head.
It's the wrong debate. Much of our genes effects go through the kind of responses we get in the environment. The kid with a high polygenic score for education gets that high education because he evokes a response from his parents and from his teachers that gives him more pedagogical instruction and more encouragement. So genes work through the environment. And second, the environment is partly the genes of other people 1 degree removed, meaning like the social genetic effects I was talking about. Your spouse's genes affect you. That's part of your environment, but it's her genes or his genes. So that's number 2. And then number 3, going back to the example of obesity or smoking, how your genes matter, whether they matter, depends on the environment you're in. So you really can't separate out nature and nurture. They're 2 sides of the same coin.
Conley's book, The Social Genome, is available now wherever books are sold. You can find more information about Dalton Conley and all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Greg Johnson.